Alright guys, so I'm back with another video. So when we're not aiming, we're doing the regular original aim offset that was with this. When we are aiming, then we'll use the other blend uh, pose. Now the speed at which the response of this is currently only limited to the actual locomotion system itself. So if I'll investigate the turn in place system to see if there's some way that I can increase the responsiveness to so that there's not a delay and he immediately turns in place. But right now there's a delay and he doesn't immediately turn in place, and we can only rotate the character so far without him turning into like a pretzel. So uh, yeah, but anyway, seems to work pretty good, and I got about as responsive as I could, and I'll explain that to you. So my original thought was that I needed an aim offset. I actually uh, didn't need to use an aim offset. It ended up being easier to set up and more preferable to set up using a BlendSpace. And so I ended up swapping out the aim offset that I did with the BlendSpace, and there's less setup involved in it. So I'll go ahead and explain that to you. So I made these poses, and any one of these given poses is only rotated 75 degrees in any direction. So 75 left, 75 up, 75 down, 75 right, so on and so forth. So the thing about blend spaces is that accuracy is important, and that's the reason why we use MeshSpace. So MeshSpace is important when you need accuracy, and that's the reason why we're applying this in MeshSpace. So on these poses right here, these will be down in the description in a zip file. You can download them and use them, or you can make your own if you want. I'll probably go over the general process of making your own. But inside of here right now, the modular control rig is screwed up, and the backward solver is screwing up the arms when you bake stuff to it, and we need to bake for that. But anyway, I'll go over that near the end of the video if I don't forget. Hopefully, I won't. But anyway, so the important thing to know is that all of these need to be in MeshSpace, and all of these need to be set to the pistol CC, which is the center pose. That's where we start from, and so all of these other angles are just offset as deltas between this and that. So that's how that works with this setup. So what you're going to do is you're going to select all of these, and you're going to right click them and go to Asset Actions and go to Edit Selection and Property Matrix. And then inside of here, you should be able to go under Additive Settings and change this to MeshSpace and choose Selected Animation Frame. And then right here, what you're going to do for the base pose animation is select this Pistol CC one and then press that back button. And it's going to change all of these to that. Even the Pistol CC. We want the Pistol CC to be as well. I'm not going to go into all the details of the math behind that and why it is, but just know that it's basically 1 plus 1 versus 1 minus 1, stuff like that. So it's actually basic elementary math when you really get into it. There's nothing real mysterious about how this stuff works. They don't use some advanced technological algorithm to somehow generate these. It's just basic math. So anyway, moving on. After you've done that, you're going to right click and go to animation and select blend space right here. And you're going to create a blend space, and I'll just do this along with you. So you're going to go down and you're going to look for the UEFN. And I'm just going to say BlendSpace, Pistol, YouTube here. And then once you get this open, you're going to expand this so that you have space here because of this annoying problem where this window covers this one, but we need to drag stuff from this window into that window. It's really annoying. And so what you can do is you can select all of them and drag them out there. And then, okay, that doesn't work. But anyway, now you won't see anything in the viewport right now, and that's because by default it automatically set Pistol CC, the one that I just drug in, as the preview base pose. And remember what I said about 1+1 versus 1-1? Well, when you create an additive, it gets the difference, and then when you apply an additive, it adds the difference. You see, and so if you get the difference between Pistol CC and Pistol CC, and then you add that to Pistol CC, then you have zero. That's the reason why you don't see nothing, because we just canceled it out. And so what you're going to want to do is just type in idle loop and just choose the idle standing loop here, and you'll see them inside of here. So it looks like you're going to have to drag each of these out one by one. And so LD goes in the bottom left, LU goes in the upper right, and LC goes in the center. CD goes center down. CU is center up. RC is right center. RD is right down. And RU is right up. Now, I actually forgot to enable this snap to grid. You should probably do that beforehand, but it's probably already too late. But if you do that, then it'll snap it to those points. And I'm just going to move all those one time just to make sure there's no offset, because we do not want any offsets there. We want this to be perfectly zero. And oh, okay, so I kind of messed up here. I skipped some steps. So let me just bring these into the center. And so what we need to do, actually, this needs to be -75, and this needs to be 75. And then this needs to be -75. And we should probably move these over into place because they're about to get messed up. They'll get thrown out of the scene if you don't move these in. So I'm just going to move these in. And then I'm going to set this to 75. Okay, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. And you can just say 4 and 4. And there we go. So this is your X and this is your Y. And all this should be good. And then this right here, on mine, I went with a speed of 5. So speed of 1 means that the change is it's going to take 1 second. Actually, I'll just go ahead and show you here. Okay, well, you're not going to be able to see in here for some reason, but just take my word for it that 1 it'll take 1 second to get from where you're at to where you're going. 2 will take half a second. 4 will take a quarter of a second, so on and so forth. 5 will take a fifth of a second. And 5 seems to be good. If you go above 5, then it might look a little jittery, even with smoothing. And you do want smoothing. So again, it looks like this got changed. I don't know why. So I'm just going to select that again. And now you should see this. And it won't look right, but that's okay. Don't worry too much about that. That's just because we're doing this from the idle pose and we don't have any of that other additive stuff set up like we do inside of here. So that pretty much covers the setup. So let me just close out of all this stuff here. Got too much stuff open here. Most of them are the same window open over and over again. So over here where they have their aim offset, you'll see this stuff and you'll see a dead blend right here, or actually right here, and then that'll be plugged into this, so on and so forth. We don't need the dead blending, and it does give some kind of performance overhead, so it's best not to use it. But you can just drag that BlendSpace out into here, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to look for Get AO, and you're going to select X for that one, and then on this pin, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to select Y though. And then on this, you're going to expose it. You're going to create a variable and you're going to name that variable. I named mine BlendSpace or BS aiming. You can name yours whatever. And that's pretty much it. After that, I'm using a two-way blend. And you just type in two-way blend. It should be the only thing that pops up. And for the state weight, to get the state weight, you type in state weight and you'll see two: state weight aiming and state weight ready. And we want the state weight aiming. You could use state weight ready if you want. If you use state weight aiming, when you are aiming, it'll be executing B. If you were to change this out for say state weight ready, then you could actually swap that. But I think it makes more sense to use the state weight of the aiming because we might expand our state machine later. And in case you don't know what those state weights are, you see this number right here, this 100%. That's the state weight of the ready state. And so we want the state weight of the aiming state, which is currently 0. When we blend into it, it'll go from 0 to 100% based off of this duration right here. Over 0.2 seconds, it'll interpolate from 0% to 100%. So because of that, we're able to kind of use this two-way blend mixed with this state weight to just automatically interpolate between those. And I didn't see any problems with it, but if any do creep up in the future, then you could swap that out for a blend poses by bool and just say, hey, if this is equal to 1.0, then that means we're fully blended in to that. But you could also say something like, is, is state blending in? Oh, well, you can't do that. You have to do that from a function. So if you were to do an on update function right here, and I'll just show you, then then you have your context and you have your node. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that in this video, and I'm going to reset that and delete that function that it created for me. So yeah, so that's the setup right there. That's why we're using the state weight. That's how we're getting our state weight, and that's why we're doing the two-way blend. And so whenever we're not aiming, it's going to execute A, and so that will play the original BlendSpace. And when we are aiming, it's going to play this one. And so this allows you to swap out the BlendSpace during runtime. And I might go into that. Well, I'm more than likely going to go into that in a later video. So so yeah, I'm just going to turn this into an entire series, I guess. So this series is just going to be a basic setup. I might do a more advanced setup in a later series, but I'll have to put some thought into how I want to actually do this for the advanced series. The layering system is probably going to be more sophisticated. So there is one other thing I wanted to do. Now that I have that aim offset out of the way, I'm going to go into some of the other things that I changed. So what I did do is I got this and I duplicated it and I said this is going to be MeshSpace because MeshSpace, like I said, it's accurate. And so for the lower body, we actually want to apply this in MeshSpace uh, because what it does is it actually graphs some of that pose that for the lower body, mostly right now just for the pelvis and the torso. And so if the torso or if the pelvis is lower in this pose, then it'll show up in here if we do this. So it makes it look just a little bit uh, more natural, in my opinion. And it allows us to adjust to the actual offset of the pelvis. So for this to be a mesh space, you need to select the make additive, make dynamic additive, and you need to check this. And then you need to swap this out with an apply mesh space additive. And so I'm just going to delete this because I've already done it. But now I'll go ahead and explain this other part to you. So, we're doing a layered blend per bone. And we're using branch filter. It's just easier to use branch filter than it is to actually go through and set this up. And also, I don't really want like 50,000 blend masks in here. So, to avoid that, it's just easier to do it this way because, you're basically achieving the same thing. So, uh, this one's going to be the pelvis. And these are going to be the thigh L and thigh R. And I'm just going to copy that and paste it. Replace that with an R, except these are going to have -1 blend depths, and that means that uh, we do want the pelvis, but the thing is the thighs are connected to the pelvis, just like the spine. And so if we say pelvis, blend everything onto the pelvis, well, now the legs are being blended too. So if we want the pelvis and the torso, but we don't want the thighs, then we have to include the thighs and say, hey, we want a blend depth of -1. That tells it to exclude those bone chains. So that's how that works. And you do want mesh space rotational blend. And that's basically it for the setup. Now, the motion matching is going to play on the legs, but the mesh space additive is playing on the pelvis and the spine. And then, of course, we replace part of the spine with a local space blend, and then we replace the arms completely afterwards. Now, you'll see I have a note here. Normally, we would just apply the entire thing in mesh space on the lower body, but there's a problem. It only shows up during 20-degree turns. Let me see if I can recreate it. And I think it has something to do with the leg IK. I'm not 100% sure. It's hard to reproduce, but it is there. The leg it'll go haywire. It'll turn completely off at a 90-degree angle to the left. The left leg will, if I can get it to do it. Let me see. I think I have to aim. Yeah, there. Okay. So it only seems to do it when aiming. And this is probably why in ALS, when you're aiming, it puts you in walk mode, because when you're jogging and you're or running or sprinting, your legs are moving at extreme angles. And so they're far more sensitive to these. Yep, there it goes. So they're far more sensitive to these additive overlays. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this button and say follow target actor. And now that will allow me to place the camera where I want, and it'll stay at that offset from the character. And I'll scrub through here right there. So that one was actually pretty fast, but you see how it went out. Sometimes it's a lot more obvious. But yeah, it did some funky stuff there. So I did go back and I did disconnect leg IK, thinking that leg IK might have something to do with that. It does it less often when leg IK is off, but it obviously still does it, as you can clearly see. So yeah, that's the reason why we want, for now at least, until I investigate this further, we're going to want the legs completely untouched. Now, another thing you might here's some other things I need to go into depth with you guys, because this is important for me to explain. It's about the poses. So these poses, I did have that at 0.08, and I think some of you are probably still using this pose, but in actuality, we want 0.11, and in mine, that's what I'm currently using. So I'm using 0.11 now, and that's because if we, well, let me give you a really good example, actually. So let's just ignore that one problem with the legs during MeshSpace for those 20-degree turns. I don't know why those 20-degree turns cause that, but they do. They just clash with it wrong. So what's happening whenever this happens is you're playing a jog loop, and then a 20-degree turn left or 20-degree turn right gets overlaid or blended into that. And so the leg is back in one and the leg is down in the other. And then we're also additively overlaying this in MeshSpace. And all of that combined is what is actually causing that leg buckle issue. So anyway, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. So right now it looks fine. So as you can see in the idle pose, the left leg is forward and the right leg is back. That's how the idle pose looks if you open it up outside of the animation blueprint. But if we set this to 0.08 and we're applying MeshSpace, you'll see that suddenly the legs are straight. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth about this because I covered this in my additive or my advanced animation series, which mostly covers additives, but it goes in, it basically boils down to additives are applied. Now, if we look at 0.8, you'll see the right leg is forward and the left leg is back. And if we come over here and we disconnect that MeshSpace, you'll see that their idle has the left leg forward and the right leg back, so it's the opposite. Basically, what's happening is we're getting the difference between this neutral pose and this pose, and it's saying, okay, the left leg in the neutral pose is right here, so we're getting this angle right here. And we're going to add this angle right here and this angle right here to this overlay pose. And since the legs are opposite, they basically cancel each other out. So that's, like I said, this stuff boils down to simple elementary math. There's nothing real complex about it. You just have to understand that this is math, and it'll make more sense. So that's why neutral poses are necessary whenever you're applying this on the lower body, during running, especially. If you're in an idle pose, then you can over exaggerate the pose, but you need to make sure that you do it in such a way that it actually respects the pose that you're trying to over exaggerate. So if you wanted to modify this idle pose, if I wanted to modify this idle pose, this is probably what I would do. I would open up, well, I would go to the idle loop pose. So here's the idle loop pose right here. And I would get that first frame where he's in this pose right here, and I would go up here and I would go to create asset, current pose, and I would make a pose from this. And then I would modify that pose to be to be in the stance that I wanted it to be. And then I would use that pose right here in the ready state whenever he's in idle, and that would allow me to make his legs more spread out. But then you have to remember that you have to find a way to come out of that without any problems. So yeah. Anyway, it's a complicated subject, but that basically uh, bulls it down. I think that's it. I think I've covered everything here. So, oh, I didn't cover this. So when he's idle, I don't want I don't want the overlay strength to be applied. So during idle, I have that set to 0 so that the hand moves around as much as possible. Uh, so when he's not so when he's not aiming, when he's in the ready state and he's idle, then I don't want the strength to be applied. When he's not aiming and he's not in idle, then I only want it to be applied 50%. And of course, like I said before, this is just to stabilize the hand right here. This right here, I disconnected it. Now that we have the aim offset, we don't need that hard pivot logic. And this greatly simplifies all of this and makes it easier to understand as well. So yeah, that's basically it. I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, guys. So before I go, I did do an experiment, and this seems to work fine, actually. So what I decided to try out, it's just an experiment, really, and this is optional. You don't have to do it, but I'm getting the future velocity. I'm getting the vector length of that. I'm mapping that from 0 to 500 because 500 is our max speed. Now I'm mapping that from a range of 1 to 0. And I'll just go ahead and show you so you can get vector length. And in actuality, we only need the XY vector length. So get the XY. It's a little bit more performance friendly. And then we can do a map range clamp. And so what this is saying is that when our speed is 0, the value will be 1. When our speed is 500, the value will be 0. And then we did a two-way blend here. And so whenever this value is 0, we're going to be blended into this right here. But whenever the value is 1, we're going to be blended fully into this. And what that does is it prevents that issue with that leg during the run, aim, turn left, or turn right 20 degrees. So that's a solution. Optional. You don't have to use it. Completely up to you. But yeah, so I just thought I'd share that with you guys before I ended the video. After this part, there will be an intro, a short explanation on how to create those poses right here. And I'll see you. All right, guys. Sorry. So before I go, I did say that I was going to explain to you how I made those poses and how you can make them too. So this is what I did. I went into this compilation of poses here, and I got this pose right here. And I went up here and I said create asset, current pose, and I'm just going to place this down in here. And I'm not even going to name it actually. So I have this pose and I named this the pistol CC. And that's important because we need that pistol CC pose. We could have actually referred to this one and that specific frame that this pose was in rather than creating and having an extra one. But it was just simpler for me to explain to you guys doing it that way. So duplicate it, open it up, name this one whatever you want, left center, for example. And then you can go into here and say edit with the FK control rig and say bake to control rig. And then at the world origin over here, you'll see your character and skeleton, and you're going to I held down control and pulled back on the mouse to zoom out so I could see frame 2. And that's because whenever we go into here, we want to add an additive section. And by default, it makes the additive section from 0 to 1, but we need it to be 1 frame longer than the actual animation because there's a problem with this. If you can't key that last frame in here, and I'll go ahead and show you. So if we have it like this, and I come over here and I press this button right here, okay, it looks like they actually fixed that. Okay, so they fixed that part of it, but if you don't key that last frame, or then it will not blend right here. It'll snap out of that pose. And so if you just want to make a single pose and not have to add an extra frame key down here on the end, then it's easier to just extend this 1 frame because they still haven't fixed that part of it yet. So on this additive layer, that's what we're going to make our alterations. And the reason why is because if we make a mistake that we don't like, we can come back here and we can just delete this, and then we can recreate it. We can recreate it right here. So that's important to note. So this one is currently active. I have it selected, and now with that selected and this enabled right here, so it automatically keys the frame when we make changes, I can start making my changes. And so let's see. So we have 5 bones, and I need those 5 bones to be distributed across 75 degrees. So if we say 75 divided by 5, we get 15. So that's 15 degrees. So I'm going to set my angle to 15 degrees. And then on each of these bones, I'm just going to, in world space, not in local bone space, I'm going to rotate each of these 15 degrees. And that's how I did it. You can do it however you want. So that was basically the gist of it. For the up, I did 5 on every bone. I did 10 on the neck and the head bones, and then I did 50 on the arm. That's both in the up direction and in the down direction. After you do that, you can save it, close it, and if you need to go back and make changes to it, you can go to Edit in Sequencer, and you can open that last level sequence you were working in. And you'll notice that the frames are still there. So it actually doesn't look like it keyed those frames. Did it key those frames? Don't look like it. It did key those frames. It just, for whatever reason, it's not showing a key there. Okay. Anyway, so there's keys there. They're just invisible for some reason. I normally press this button right here just so I can see that there's a key there. But anyway, that's basically it. I'll see you in the next video.